Okay, I'm making this video mainly for Lolo, but anyone who's thinking of making a tank or has made a tank and wants a bit of information, I'm just going to go through the skills and the morphs you can use on your tank. This is going to be for a Dragon Knight tank, but if you have some other class, everything other than the class skills will still apply. So you can skip past the first bit if you have a different type of tank and you want to know a bit more about the other skills. This is in Scalebreaker, so if you're watching this and it's close to 2020 or after, some of these skills may have changed. They're planning to change a couple of skills with the next update, so just bear that in mind if you're watching this in the future at some point. So starting off, I'm going to mention a lot of skills that are very situational. So if you're short on skill points, you only need to get the core skills first, and you can come back for some of these other skills later. So starting with the passives, combustion. Basically, this is just going to give you back magic whenever you burn an enemy. So whenever you use an ability that does flame damage, so anything in here is all flame damage. Anytime you use any of these skills and you get the burned stats effect on the enemy, you get 500 magic. And then if you happen to run anything that does poisoned, you'll get stamina. Generally, you're not going to do any poison damage on a tank, but it's there if you do decide to use a bow, for example. Warmth is going to snare any enemy you hit with these. Any direct hits with these abilities, so when you chain an enemy it's going to snare them so they won't be able to run away as easily, so that's a good one to get. Searing Heat you don't need if you are short on skill points. It's just going to increase the damage on Fiery Breath, so 10% extra damage, kind of nice, but it's not going to help you tank. Same with World and Ruin. It's going to increase your damage with fire AoEs and reduce the cost of your poison abilities. So these you can save for skill points if you're just starting out. If not, it's just a little bit of extra damage that can help you out. DK Standard is mainly going to be for DPS. If they do happen to introduce a boss into the game later on that is able to heal and is not able to be interrupted, one of the morphs, the Shifting Standard, does defile the enemy. So that may be of some use in the future, but right now you don't really need this skill. Lava Whip is all DPS, Searing Strike is also DPS. One morph of this does have a heal, but it's based on your damage done, so it's not going to be great on the tank. Now, Fiery Breath morphed into Engulfing Flames. You could use Noxious Breath to do AoE Fracture, but this is a unique, the Engulfing Flames morph is a unique buff specific to Dragon Knights. So this is the one you're going to want to go for. So what it does is any enemy you hit takes 10% extra damage from all fire attacks from everyone in the group. So if you're ever running with magic DPS who are running a flame staff, even if it's just a light attacks and elemental blockade, it's going to be a big damage boost. And then if you're running with like Templars who have fire damage built into their kit, or Dragon Knights, it's going to see a huge boost. Now obviously if you're running with stamina DPS, or if you're running with a sword who's using double lightning staffs, you don't need to run this skill. Next up is the Fiery Grip. You want to morph this into Unrelenting Grip. This other morph is a gap closer, so this is for kind of PvP DPS. So you definitely want Unrelenting Grip. What this is going to do is it's going to pull the enemies to you. It's going to give you movement speed, so 30% movement speed for 4 seconds, and it's going to refund the cost if the ability fails to pull the enemy. So this, in my opinion, is one of the best skills on the Dragon Knight. Let me just put the Engine Guardian on. Now a trick you can do with this is The Engine Guardian, when you use an ability, 10% chance to summon the Dwemer, who will give you health, stamina, or magic. Now, if you use a skill that doesn't have a cost, like Elemental Drain, the Dwemer won't work. But technically, because the chain is costing you, even though it's instantly refunded, your little Dwemer friend will still come out. So he gives me magic, and I can basically spam skills and never run out of magic while he's up. Back to the chain. There's another one. He's always giving me health, so I can drop block for a while. So if you're ever having resource issues, the chain is a great option. You can use it, doesn't cost you anything. If you use it on a boss or any enemy that's CC immune, you can be just spamming this for free damage with light attacks. You can block cast this, so you can be completely safe and just be doing free damage. It's also burning the enemy every so often, so that's activating the free magic return. So if you see below his health bar there, it's 4 seconds of burning.
This is not what I was built for.
You can use this to hit the boss and then run and do a mechanic. You can use it to hit the boss and kind of close the distance quickly. So this, in my opinion, is one of the best skills. I personally never take it off my bar. Now, if you're versus a single target and there's no adds, technically you don't need it, but it just adds so much. You can do damage with it, you can get mobility with it, you can, if you pair it up with Engine Guardian, you can get resources off it. So I think it's a great skill. I would never take it off my bar personally, but certain fights it's not technically needed, so if you feel like you need to take it off, you can.
Whatever are you doing?
But definitely one of the best skills the Dragon Knight has. Now if you're not a Dragon Knight, your only option is down in the Fighters Guild. Silver Bolts, same sort of thing, but it costs stamina, but it won't refund you if it doesn't work. So it's pretty draining on your stamina, and it's not as effective. But if you're not a Dragon Knight, that may be your only option, depending on what class you are. But back to the Ardent Flame. Inferno, one of the morphs of this, Cauterize, is a heal. So what it will do is every 5 seconds it will shoot a fireball out at one of your allies and heal them. It will automatically hit the weakest person, which is nice. And it will give you Major Prophecy, so that's 10% spell crit. So your magic skills on your magic heals are more likely to crit. Personally, I don't run this skill because it's not very reliable. It will go off every 5 seconds, but a lot can happen in 5 seconds. People can die. If someone's low and you need that heal to go off, maybe it's 3-4 seconds away. But it's nice if you want just a fire and forget heal. It will just gradually take over. I think it ranks up to well, it will fire 4 fireballs. So one when you activate, and then 5, 10, 15 seconds. Can use it if you want, but I don't personally use this skill. Draconic Power. The leap is not great on tanking, because you will knock enemies away from you, and generally you want to group them up. It does damage, not going to be great compared to other ultimates you can use. Spiked Armor, it's going to give you physical and spell resistance 5 to 80, which is just about 10% damage reduction for your armor value. And it'll do a little bit of reflected damage to the enemy, 550 when they hit you. One thing to bear in mind is if you have another source of major resolve or major ward, they will not stack. So the reason why I don't have this skill is because I'm using a different skill to get major ward and major resolve. So if you like using Mighty Chudan as your monster helm, you don't need this skill. If you're using balance, if you're using immovable, any skill that gives you major ward and major resolve, you don't need to stack them. So you just pick one and stick with it. As far as the passive goes, this lasts 20 seconds, so it's going to activate your passives for 20 seconds. First one, Iron Skin, is just you can block 10% more damage. You don't need any specific skills active to do this. It's just 10% across the board. Burning Heat, you'll get 12% more healing while one of these skills is active. So that's the 20 seconds there. So when you cast Spiked Armor, for the next 20 seconds, you get 12% extra healing. Elder Dragon, 5% extra health recovery per one of these abilities that's slotted. Now, health recovery is not a great stat in PvE. It will tick every 2 seconds. So right now I'm a vampire, my health recovery is minimal. It's 300, so that's 150 per second. If you're not a vampire, maybe you got 400 or 500 health recovery, so 250 health a second. Generally it's not enough to save your life. It's more for PvP, because PvP healing is half, but health recovery isn't. So extra health recovery, nice to have, but it's not going to help you that much. But the second part of this, increase the range of your instant melee attacks by 2 meters, is nice. So your taunts, your heroic slash, any melee skill, you're going to be able to use it from 2 meters further away than you would on another class. So definitely worth picking up, even though the health recovery isn't an amazing stat. Okay, so last up is Scaled Armor. Spell resistance by 3300. That's close to 5% damage reduction on your spell resistance, on your magic stat. Just bear in mind that if you reach the cap of your spell or physical resistance, it stops working. That's after 50%. So back to the skills. Dark Talons. Burning Talons is a DPS morph. Choking Talons is the one you're going to want. What it's going to do is it's going to immobilize enemies around you for 4 seconds, and it's going to inflict them with minor maim, so 15% reduced damage, and it's going to give a synergy to your friends, which will do magic damage. Now, synergies, the damage is based on the synergizer's stats, so if a DPS hits a synergy, it's going to do a lot more damage than that 4,500 that you see there. Really nice skills. It's AoE minor maim. It is lockdown for the enemies, so pull them all in, stack them in a group, lock them down with talons, reduce the damage, kill them all in trash fights. Now, if it's just you and a boss one-on-one, you can swap this skill out for something else, but I definitely say this is a core skill. It's going to be useful on pretty much every trash pull in the game, as well as boss fights with ads. Now, Dragon's Blood. Coagulating blood is going to be healed off your max magic and spell damage. So this is the DPS option. So what you want to take is the green Dragon's Blood. It's going to heal you for 37% of your missing health, and then it's going to give you health and stamina recovery increased by 20%, and healing received increased by 8%. This will last 23 seconds, so this will activate your passives here. Another 12% healing received for 23 seconds. So even though this is a burst heal, you can use it before the fight starts, or you can use it during the fight if you don't need a heal, just to activate these passives. So you get the 12% there, you get another 8%, so even if you don't need a heal, you can cast this to get basically 20% extra healing coming in for the next 23 seconds. This is going to be one of the best burst heals in the game, especially on your Dragonite. It's going to heal for a lot. It's fairly expensive though, so just be careful. You can't spam it too much. 4,000 magic cost. Next up, Protective Scale. Fire Scale is just going to do extra damage, so the one you want is the Protective Plate. It's going to reduce the damage you take from all projectiles by 50%, so this is for 6 seconds. So if you're fighting a boss that is an archer or a mage, or any boss that throws projectiles, so like Lord Warden, all of his attacks are projectiles other than his teleport strike. Last boss, Falkreath, his light and heavy attacks, he just throws fireballs. So you can basically swap out your block for this, so you're basically avoiding half of the damage for 6 seconds. Or you can do the combo of both. You can block and use this, and you take in 50% from block plus an extra 50% from your wings. Now the second part of this, the protective plate morph, you're going to get immunity to snares and immobilize for 2 seconds. So this is great for any fights where you're going to get heavily snared. So if you think like the last boss of Cradle of Shadows, if you're in the catacombs and you don't have a light, you can run through the darkness, use the skill, run for 3 seconds, use it again, run for 3 seconds, find a brazier, get your magic back, run again, use it, run for 3 seconds, etc, etc. Last boss, Fanglair. If you're being chased by the scarabs and they're snaring you, you can use this to get away from them. Last boss of Hircine's Hunt, whatever that one's called, when the dogs are snaring you, you can use it in that fight. It's just great for getting away from snares if you need to go and do mechanics, or if you need to get away from specific enemies. Your next skill, Inhale. Draw Essence. It's going to make it cost a bit less, but the main draw of this skill is the Morph Deep Breath. And what this is going to do is it's going to automatically bash all enemies in an AoE of you. So most fights you're not going to use this. It's going to be for if you've got a fight with a bunch of archers or a bunch of mages. You pull them all in and then they all start channeling and you need to bash them all, but you can't. Like, it's difficult to like spin around and bash a bunch of enemies when they're all clumped up. So you can just use this skill, bash them all. It will also deal some damage and it will heal you for the damage done. So it's a bit of a heal. It's not going to be amazing because it's based on the damage you do, the heal, but you're mainly using this for the like auto bash feature, essentially. So this one's great for certain fights, like if you're doing Hellroth Citadel and you're upstairs, you've got to bash all of the like, clones. You can just use this instead of like trying to spin and bash each target one by one. Lastly, for the Dragon Knights, we've got the Earthen Heart. For passives, you've got increase the duration of your abilities, which is very nice. You've got heals in here, you've got stuns, you've got shields, so extra duration is always nice. Battle Roar, whenever you cast an ultimate, you get health, magic, and stamina. So this is going to be your sustain. The more expensive the ultimate is, the more resources you'll get back. So if you're heavily drained on resources, what you want to do is fight for a bit, use a potion. Fight for a bit, use your ultimate. Fight for a bit, use a potion. So you're kind of staggering those two things. So you're draining resources, getting it back. Draining, getting it back. Next up, Mountain's Blessing. So whenever you cast any of the skills in the skill line, you will give everyone in your group Minor Brutality, which is 10% weapon damage. This is a unique buff to Dragon Knights. And then you also get 3 ultimate once every 6 seconds. So the skill you're going to be using most is going to be Obsidian Shield. So if you cast in this every 6 seconds, your group's going to have 10% weapon damage, and you're going to be getting 3 ultimate every 6 seconds, sorry. And last up, when you cast any of these abilities, you restore 990 stamina. So what this means is you can essentially turn these magic abilities into stamina. So if you need to just hold block, your stamina won't regenerate while you're blocking with a shield. So you can cast these abilities while you're blocking to get stamina back as you're spending it to block. So onto the skills. The ultimate, Magma Armor, you want to go for Magma Shell. Corrosive Armor is a DPS option, so you're not going to want this. Magma Shell is the one you want. Basically what this does is makes you almost invincible for 12 seconds. It's going to limit the amount of damage to 3% of your max health. So heavy attacks from bosses, whatever it is, as long as it's not a one-shot mechanic, one-shot mechanics will still go through this and instantly kill you. But what this basically means is you'll have to take 34 hits without healing at all to die during this 12-second period. So this is great if you're in a really high damage situation, or if you need to resurrect somebody. You can just use this, basically go god mode for 12 seconds where you can't be killed. And then the magma shell morph part is all of your allies nearby will get a shield for 100% of their max health. So it's just going to help everyone survive the massive amount of damage that's coming in. So this is kind of like a barrier, except this one just does the max health of everyone rather than scaling with your magic or stamina, which is generally not going to be too high on your tank. So you can use this as a replacement for barrier if you want to run barrier. Like if you're a healer, for example, barrier will probably be stronger than this skill because it can shield for more than the person's max health. But on a tank, this is an amazing skill. This is your skill you're gonna want to run if you are just really having trouble with a fight, if you're not getting enough healing, or if you're struggling to do mechanics. It's almost like a 10-second reset of the fight. You can drop block, you can heavy attack, get your resources back, heal up, and then try to start build up ultimate towards either doing it again to reset the fight again, or build up your resources just to help your allies stay alive, do whatever you need to do in the fight. Next skill, Stone Fist. We're going to morph this into Obsidian Shard. So this isn't really an essential skill. Like if you're missing skill points, you don't really need this. All this is going to do is it's going to be a ranged stun. So you can throw it 28 meters, stun the target for 3 seconds, and then it will heal the weakest person for almost 5,000 health. So it's a nice heal. Generally, there's not much you want to stun. Your chain will interrupt anything that a target is channeling. So if you've got an archer taking aim, or a mage casting ability, you can just chain them in usually, because the chain is just a really great skill you're probably already going to have. But this is mainly for fights like Fanglair, where you want to keep the scarab away from you. So you're rolling away, you're throwing the stun out at range, and then you just getting away from the enemy. You can use it as an extra heal if the group is struggling. One unique thing about this skill is it's got 28 meter range, and then the heal has a 28 meter range from the target. So technically you can be 56 meters away from your ally. If they're the opposite side of the boss to you, you could throw the shard at the boss, and then they get the heal way out, on the opposite side of the boss. So this is basically the longest range heal in the game. But like I say, it's one of those skills that useful in certain situations and certain groups, but you can save your skill points if you are running low. Molten weapons. This skill basically is just going to give your teammates sorcery and brutality. So if you want to save gold for your teammates, so they don't have to run weapon and spell power potions, it's not going to give them the crit benefit. So I mean, most people for end game stuff, or like higher end groups, should all have access to this buff. But if you want to help out your group save a bit of money, you can run this skill. But again, it doesn't really help you tank at all. It's just going to help your allies if they are a bit stingy. Obsidian Shield. This is another one of the really great Dragon Knight skills that's going to help you tank. We're going to morph this into Ignis Shield. So what this is going to do is going to give you a 9,000 health shield, and it's going to give all your allies nearby you, I think up to 6, a shield for 3,600. Now this is going to scale from your max health, so the more max health you have, the bigger the shield is. This is great for not only protecting yourself, but you can also protect everyone nearby. And it's going to give you major mending, so you can cast this before you use your heals, or you can throw a heal over timeout, and then you can use this, and it will get boosted up by 25%. Ignis Shield into Dragon's Blood is the combo that, like, if you're really struggling, it's going to save your life. I've seen Green Dragon's Blood heal for over 50,000 on a crit, just because of you've got Ignis Shield, you've got these passives from Draconic Power that are giving you extra healing received, extra healing done. So even though this skill says 37% of your missing health, with all these passives going, it can be a 5% to 100% heal with these buffs going on. This is also going to be great for activating your Mind Blessing and Helping Hands. So you cast a shield, you get stamina, cast a shield, get ultimate. Petrify is the next skill. We're going to go for Fossilize. Again, this is a skill you're not going to use that often. This is a stun for 3 seconds, and then an immobilize for another 3 seconds after they break out the stun. So this is pretty much your best stun that you have. It's almost like a 6-second keep the enemy at bay. Now, you're really only going to want to use this on fights like Fanglair, when you want to keep the Scarab away, or on the last boss of Hircine's Hunt. I keep forgetting what that dungeon is called. It doesn't matter. But when you're trying to keep the dogs away from you or the group. But it is only 7-meter range, so you do have to be close to the enemy to use this. This is another one of those ones, if you're low on skill points, I wouldn't worry about it. It's just going to be used in very specific fights. Ash Cloud, you want to morph this Cinderstorm. Eruption is a DPS option. This is basically just a heal over time, lasts 18 seconds, you put it on the ground, it's going to snare enemies that walk into it, and then on this setup right now, 954 healing every second. That will obviously be increased if you have those passives running with your shield, with your Dragon's Blood. Compared to Vigor, it's a similar sized heal, depending on your magic and stamina stats. It's pretty expensive because it's an 18-second heal. So if you're going to cast this, make sure you're going to be stood there for at least the majority of it. If you're going to be running around a lot, this skill is not very good. This skill will also last longer than Vigor, but it costs magic instead of stamina. So if you're really struggling for stamina, you can run this. If you're really struggling for magic, you can run Vigor. If you're really struggling for healing, you can run both. It's up to you. Now we're going to go into the weapon skill lines. I'll start with Sword and Shield. The ultimate. The choice of morph is kind of up to you. Spell Wall is going to reflect all projectiles for 6 seconds. Shield Discipline is going to make all of your Sword and Shield abilities cost 0 while it's active. So this is my preferred one. Spell Wall is just as good. Certain fights it's going to be amazing. Certain fights the morph part is going to be useless. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to make you auto block for 8 seconds without costing you any magic or stamina. And then this particular morph is going to make your abilities cost nothing. So a good thing about this skill is it gives you long enough to get a res. So you can taunt the boss, go stand next to a body, use this ability, and then resurrect somebody. If the boss goes to heavy attack you, you're still auto blocking. So you'll just block it as if you were stood there blocking. You can also combo this with skills that have a cast time, because you can't block where you are casting a skill. So you can use this and then use the cast skill, and you'll get the benefit of the skill plus blocking. It's also a cheap option. It only costs 135. If you are in a fight where you have to block a lot, and you're going to be struggling for resources. So if you think of like the last boss of Bloodroot Forge, if you've got 3 of those guys on you, you can pop this, and then you can just heavy attack the bosses to get your stamina back. And then when this ability fades after 8 seconds, you back up to holding block, try and build up 135 ultimate, use it again, start heavy attacking, get back all your stamina, get back all your magic, rinse and repeat. Puncture is going to be your main taunt. Now, the 2 morphs is up to you what you want to run. Pierce Armor has always been the traditional one that people will run. It's going to add Breach as well as Fracture, so you'll reduce the enemy's physical and spell resistance. Ransack is going to give you minor protection, so that's just flat 8% reduced damage. Now this skill, Ransack, is much more selfish for you. It's going to help you stay alive, but if you're running with a healer who you know is good and is going to be running Elemental Drain, this morph becomes redundant, the Pierce Armor morph, because they'll already have their spell resistance reduced. So if you're not feeling confident, Ransack is the way to go. Pierce Armor is always going to be a good option, but it's not going to make you as resistant to damage. So if you know you're running with a good healer or you don't feel confident, Ransack is the way to go. Pierce Armor if you are running a lot of pug groups, or you are not running with a healer often, if you're running 3 DPS, or if you don't trust your healer to keep up the Elemental Drain, you go with Pierce Armor. You can also run Elemental Drain yourself if you're running a staff, and just run Ransack. So either choice, it's up to you. It's just a matter of preference, who you're playing with, how much you trust the people you're playing with. Next skill, Low Slash. It's going to do some damage, it's going to maim the target. Your 2 morphs, Deep Slash is going to make it into an AoE skill, which you don't need because your Choking Talons does the same thing. It's going to maim and slow. Oh, well, the Talons will maim and immobilize, this will maim and slow, so you don't need this. Heroic Slash is the one you're going to go for. It's going to give you minor heroism, which is 1 ultimate every 1.5 seconds. So extra ultimate is good. Defensive Posture, either morph you take here is good. Basically it's going to give you a shield. Defensive Stance is going to increase the amount of damage you can block, and it's going to reduce the cost of your block. Well, Absorb Missile is going to heal you for, on this build, 7,500 when you get hit with a projectile. So arrows, spells, fireballs, whatever it is. Both morphs are good. It's up to you which one you want to take. The shield size is the same as far as I know. It's just whether you want the better block or you want the healing from projectiles. Now personally, I have a lot of block cost reduction already, and you get diminishing returns the more you have. So I like to run Absorb Missile. But Defensive Stance is going to be good in every fight, whereas Absorb Missile is going to be amazing in certain fights and not as good in the majority of fights. So it's up to you. You can have the skill that is good across the board in Defensive Stance, or you can have the skill that is amazing in very specific circumstances, not as good the rest of the time. Now personally, if I need a second shield, I'll run Bone Shield, and then Absorb Missile I'll run on the specific fights where the enemy's using projectiles, so those fights like Lord Warden, Last Boss Falkreath. So choice here is completely up to you. Both morphs are good. This is just the one that I prefer. Shield Charge, all it's going to be is a gap closer. Shield Assault will just give you a shield when you use it. You don't even need to morph this if you don't want to. You're only going to use this if you need the gap closer. Really, the only fight I can think of that you would want a gap closer is in the spider caves of Cradle of Shadows. When the boss teleports around, you have to get to her and bash. Or maybe for Zamaja in Cloud Rest. Just basically, if there's a boss that likes to teleport away from you and you need to get to it quickly, but most of the time you can just run there, or you can use your chain to get movement speed and just sprint there. So if you're short on skill points, you can either not get this, or you can just spend the 1 point just to get the gap closer. It's up to you. Power Bash, again, not an amazing skill, it's more for DPS. One Morph has Defile on it, so like I said before with the standard, if they do bring out a boss that is healing a lot and you can't stop it, you may want the Defile on this skill, but right now, not too useful. As far as passive goes, reduce the cost of the abilities and reduce cost of blocking, definitely need that. Increase weapon damage and the amount you can block by 20%, definitely want that. Bash is better and costs 40% less, definitely want that. Reduce damage from projectiles, definitely want that. And increase movement speed while blocking, definitely want that. So all these passives, really good, definitely want to pick those up. In the Destruction Staff, the ultimate, this was going to follow you around, just going to do damage, not that amazing. Elemental Rage is going to add an extra effect, so the icy one, if you use an ice staff, will immobilize targets. Generally, the only fight I can think that that's good in is the last boss of Moonhunter Keep, where the werewolves come out. You just want to keep them away from the group. Main reason I have this is if you're running Pogs and the damage is just so low that everything is dying so slow, you can use this, and with your ultimate generation you can out DPS some DPS in the game. If you're really struggling, you can even put on a fire staff. If you're at no risk of dying and the dungeon's pretty easy, you can just put on a fire staff, run this ultimate, run like elemental blockade, maybe crushing shock, and just basically be a third DPS while tanking on your other bar. But this one you don't technically need to tank, it's not really that useful. This is just if you need to make up for your group. First skill, this is just going to do DPS, but the morph, crushing shock, it's going to interrupt anyone who's casting an ability from range. So 28 meters. There are certain bosses who will channel attacks or one-shot the whole group. Generally a healer or a magic DPS will run this skill, but if they're having troubles, like if the boss that needs bashing keeps running behind you and they can't get to it, or if they can't get to it in time, or you don't trust your teammates to get to it in time, or they just flat out don't have crushing shock or don't know the mechanics, you can run crushing shock from the tank position and just, it's basically like a ranged bash, so you can bash people from across the room. Next skill, Wall of Elements, you know, for elemental blockade, because the duration is longer. So the only reason to run this skill, it's going to do a bit of damage. It has a chance to chill enemies, which will maim them, and then if they are chilled, it will immobilize them. But the main reason for this skill is to activate your enchantment. So on the staff, we're using the Crusher enchantment, 2100 reduction in physical and spell resistance, so that's almost just over 4% DPS. So if I cast this skill, if you look under the guy's health bar, you see the enchantment activates for 5 seconds. So even if I swap bars and I'm tanking on this bar, it reactivates for another 5 seconds. And then activates again for another 5 seconds. So you cast this and it basically automatically makes the enchantment proc 3 times in a row. So it means you can stay on your sword and shield bar for 15 seconds if you need to. If you're not running this skill, you have to swap back to your ice staff and light attack the boss every 5 seconds to keep this up. So it's basically just an ease of life kind of deal.
Well, hopefully you've
Makes things easier for you. You don't have to worry about swapping back every 5 seconds to get your enchantment to go off. You can just use this skill once, and then you're good for 15 seconds.
I'm not a guard factotum, you know.
Even if you, like, it will activate your staff enchant, even if you're bar swapping. You know, even if you cast a skill and you gotta run over here to do something, this guy's still gonna get hit by that crusher enchant. So this is one of the skills. It doesn't help you tank per se. Like, the damage is minimal, the effect is pretty minimal. It's just there to keep that crusher up. So, like I say, if you don't want to run this, you don't have to, but if you want to keep that crusher enchantment up, you'll have to bar swap and light attack the target every 5 seconds. Destructive touch is not going to be great on an ice staff with the morph. It does have a range to mobilize, but you have ranged stuns, so there's no reason to run immobilize over a stun, really. You can run this skill if you want to run a flame staff to knock enemies off cliffs. There's only 1 or 2 dungeons where that's really a thing or necessary, or not even necessary, just kind of makes things easier. But it's up to you. If you feel like you can tank with a fire staff and you want to knock stuff off cliffs, you go ahead. If you're short on skill points, I wouldn't bother. Next skill, pretty much what this skill does, just gives breach for 20 seconds. This morph is just refreshes it, so it's not that great. Elemental Drain is the one you want to go for. It's going to give minor magic steal. Pretty much every healer who is decent will be running this skill. So if they're running it, it doesn't stack, so you don't need to run this. If you're running with 3 DPS and they are magic, or you know, some of them are magic, you can run this for them. It will give the spell resistance debuff, and it will give them back 300 magic every time they do damage. It will also give you back 300 magic every time you do damage to the enemy. So, like I say, you could put this on, use your blockade, and then you're getting the magic back every time this ticks. As well as activating your enchant, it's giving you back. You're basically refunding the cost of your ability. Just get by that magic steal.
Why, I never.
Oops, apparently I was recording for too long. So, last skill is Pulsar. The other morph is just DPS skill. What this is going to do is it's going to put minor mangle on enemies. It's going to reduce their max health by 10%. It's not going to work on bosses, so this is just for trash fights, if you're in for speedruns, things like that. If you think in the later dungeons, every enemy has 300,000 health. So if you run into the middle of, let's say, 5 enemies, use this skill, you're taking off 150,000 health just straight off the top. So it helps you get through speedruns a bit quicker, but not going to help you tank too much. As far as the passive go, try focus. When you heavy attack with a frost staff, it will taunt the enemy and give you a damage shield with 3,400, and it's going to make your blocking with a frost staff cost magic instead of stamina. If you don't like that and you want to always block with stamina, you just don't take this passive. Personally, I like the option of using one or the other, so I like to have this, but some people don't, so it's your choice. You can not take this passive if you don't want to block with magic with your frost staff. Penetrate magic, 10% extra spell resistance ignored with the destruction staff abilities. Nothing major here. It's going to add a little bit of damage, but not going to help you tank, so you can save skill points here if you're running low. Chance to apply Burning Concussant Shield by 100%. So with a Frost Staff, Chilled is going to apply minor maim, so it's the same as your Heroic Slash and your Talons. Also, if you're running Elemental Blockade, it will immobilize any targets that are chilled. So it's going to double your chance. So I believe a light attack is 10%, so it goes to 20%. Every tick of your blockade is 1%, so it goes to 2% per target per tick. So it's just free extra chance to reduce damage. So that's a nice one to have. Ancient Knowledge. Frost Staff reduces cost of blocking by 36%, increases the amount of damage you can block by 20%. Very nice. Destruction Expert. When you kill an enemy with a Destruction Staff ability, you restore magic. Every so often you will get the killing blow, so it's just free magic. So it's nice to have, not super essential. Now if you're running a Lightning Staff, all the same stuff applies. You don't get the defensive bonuses, but you do have a chance to concuss the enemy. Concussed enemies are set off balance by Elemental Blockade. So concussion is 8% extra damage taken. Off balance is it will make your heavy attacks give you double resources. They will take, I believe it's another 15% extra damage. And if you heavy attack them, they will be stunned and knocked over if they're able to be stunned. So Lightning Staff is going to increase your group's DPS, but it gives you no defensive options. If you don't want to run any of those weapons, the two-hander doesn't have any abilities that will automatically activate your enchantment. Momentum, morphed into forward momentum, is another snare removal and a small heal over time. If you want a stamina based snare removal, you could use this. And then Cleave morphs into Brawler, which gives you a shield for each enemy you hit. But generally, two-hander is going to probably be the worst of all the back weapons to use. Again, no defensive bonuses. Dual Wields is going to have no abilities that automatically do your enchantment. Actually, Blade Cloak. Blade Cloak will activate enchantment. It also gives you 25% damage reduction from area of effect attacks. But Dual Wield runs into the same problem as Sword and Shield, that the enchantment is half efficiency because it's one of two weapons. There's no heals or anything in this kit, or no burst heals, so probably not going to want to run Dual Wield. Bow, Volley, morphed into Endless Hail, will be the skill that activates your enchantment. Poison Arrow, one of the morphs, not Poison Injection, the other morph, is a ranged interrupt, so it will work the same as Crushing Shock with the staff, so you can bash enemies from distance. But generally, Bow will give you slightly more damage if your concussion time is already good. But generally it's not going to be super defensive. It hasn't got any really defensive skills in its kit. And then Resto Staff is your other option. Obviously this is all healing stuff. Nothing does damage here, so the only way to activate your enchantment is to light attack the enemy. So you have to light attack every 5 seconds. Healing, at least on my build right now, my max magic is pretty low, so only 566 on grand healing. Healing is not going to be great, but if you stack enough heals on top of each other, it will end up being a decent amount of healing. But generally I find I have 3 or 4 really solid heals already without this, so when you combine that with shields, I'm usually doing pretty well for healing. But this is an option you can run if you want to. The getting extra magic back from heavy attacks is nice, but this is something I don't really mess around with. Now as far as your armor goes, the weights of armor you want to use, the Untaunted will give you extra bonuses for wearing different types of armor. You're going to want a minimum of 5 heavy. If you want to, you can run 6 heavy, 7 heavy. If you want to be really tanky, You can run 1 or 2 pieces of medium if you want extra stamina regen and stamina cost reduction. You can run 1 or 2 pieces of light armor if you want to do magic regen and magic cost reduction. Personally, I prefer 5 heavy, 1 medium, 1 light. You can do whatever you want. You can do 5 and 2, you can do 6 and 1, you can do 7 and 0. Completely up to you. If you're not using one of these weights, you don't need any of these passives. So if you're doing 6 heavy, 1 medium, you don't need the light armor passives. And then the same applies to medium, or both of them if you're running 7 heavy. So light armor, grace, reduce the effectiveness of snares and reduce the cost of sprinting. Nice bonuses, nothing too amazing. Evocation, magic regen 4%, reduced cost of magic skills 2%. That's very nice to have. Spell warding 363, spell resistance, so that's like 0.5% of damage reduction. Medium armor, increased weapon crits, gonna make your figures crit slightly more often, your melee skills crit slightly more often. Windwalker, stamina recovery, reduce stamina cost of abilities. The cost is very nice, the regen doesn't matter too much unless you're blocking a lot on your frost staff. And then athletics, movement speed, and reduced cost of dodge roll. Dodge roll is very nice. You can completely avoid certain high damage attacks if you can dodge roll at the right time. And then you sometimes need to be sprinting around to do mechanics or collect enemies together or get out of AoEs. So that's nice. Nice bonuses to have there. And your heavy armor, the skill, the base skill, is just going to give you major resolve, major ward. Same as before, if you already have this buff from some other source, Mighty Tudan, your hardened armor, or balance, you don't need this skill. This one lasts for 20 seconds, but the bonus effect of this morph, immovable, is that you will take reduced damage. The amount you can block is increased by 5% per piece of heavy armor. So I'm wearing 5 pieces of heavy armor, so I activate the skill, I can block 25% more damage. And this skill also has immunity to knockback and disabling effects for 4 seconds, but it reduces your movement speed by 65%. So if you use this skill, you're going to be locked in place. So if you see my movement speed, I'm really slow. I could dodge roll to get away a little bit, but basically, fix the spot. So you only want to use this skill if there's a mechanic where you have to literally just stand there and take the damage. Like if you stood in the geysers in Bloodroot Forge, or you stood in Dragon's Breath in like Sunspire Trial. Like if there's damage you just cannot avoid and you have to take it, that's where this skill comes in handy. And then as far as the passives go, increase your resistances per piece of heavy armor, so it just makes you more tanky. And then Constitution, health recovery. Again, health recovery is not the best passive, the best stat to have, but this second part, you get magic and stamina every time you take damage per piece of heavy armor once every 4 seconds. So every 4 seconds I get hit, I get 541 magic and stamina back.